Hi, Jared. Jared's Business Unit Director of Sports Med at Medacta. Again, not everybody was meant to be an allied health professional, and Kimberly, you weren't. So we've got a bit of a mix of people on the call. But Jared also started his career in physio before moving into a clinical specialist position. And over the last 11 years has very specifically built up his commercial and business acumen, leadership skills to be in this position today. So I'll hand over to you, Jared, to share your career journey.
Thanks, Tara. I'll just share my screen. Can you see that okay?
Yes, that's great.
Okay, perfect. Well, they've been some really impressive presentations, so I'll do my best to try and keep up. But Tara's asked me to talk a little bit about being hireable and desirable, and I guess what that means. She said talk a little bit about your career, so I'll talk a bit about myself and how I got to where I am, and basically just some thoughts around how to be, I guess, hireable or desirable to any manager that you're interviewing for. A couple of points down the bottom. These are strictly my opinions and personal experiences only. There is absolutely no research or fact going into this. It's just my experience. And please ask questions. I know Tara said wait till the end, but if you've got something that you want to ask about anything I say, just interrupt me. This is a safe place. So my name's Jared. I'm the Director of Sports Medicine and Extremities at Medacta. Like many of you, I have a vocational background. I graduated as a physiotherapist in 2007. And like many of you, I have a vocational background that I probably didn't want to do at the time. So I entered medical devices in 2012 as a clinical specialist at Johnson & Johnson. I thought it was the coolest thing ever. It was a job I didn't even know existed until I was into it. There was a lot of learning, a lot of new experiences, a lot of behind the scenes of an operating theatre. And to say I had a honeymoon period for about 3 years. I transitioned from a clinical into sales. I met new people, learned my sales craft, hit numbers. Everything was really exciting. But then I realized I wanted more. I was really passionate about change. I was looking about how I could implement different efficiencies into my territories to try and do something a bit different than the same thing I did that prior year, but just with 6 or 7% more the following year. I realized I became really curious about how we can do things differently, how they're doing things differently in other states, other companies, other countries even. And then I decided that I'd embrace that drive and that enthusiasm I had for really progressing myself professionally and personally. I decided I wanted a seat at the table. I wanted to be a general manager, a managing director, or a director. My first realization is that these roles takes a significant amount of skill and experience, and I had neither. I realized that I needed some form of sales experience, which then led into sales management, a little bit of marketing experience. I needed to understand business operations, the logistics side of it, and then the financials, and really control a P&L. I worked out that was probably the logical step, but I wanted to be different again. So I really wanted to differentiate myself. How was I going to transition sales management into a leadership? How was I going to work in different markets? How was I going to get experience understanding different business models? So I was open to moving through different companies at that time to try and really, I guess, space out my skill set. So in 2015, 3 years after I'd started, there was an opportunity for me to help build an orthopedic division at a company called Life Healthcare. I was a senior territory manager, so it was just a straight transition across from what I was doing into another role, but that led into state management. So there was an idea there that I had a slight career progression. For those of you that don't know Life Healthcare, it's a large-scale distributor. So basically, I got to work on my business acumen as a direct, so I had heads underneath me, but I also got to work with distributors. So I got to understand what a relationship looked like on a business-to-business level. There was an opportunity for growth and expansion, both personally and professionally. So I grew a team underneath me. I built a business. I managed to grow the dollar value, but I also got to learn on the way, which was going to build that skill set for my next role. It's been mentioned a lot, but it's important to know who you're going to be working for and what skills they offer you, and what it is that person has done in the past and is going to teach you through your journey at that company. So I was lucky enough to have a very impressive general manager who I reported into, and then the CEO of the company I thought was someone that I wanted to base my career off, and had done a pretty good job of setting a blueprint of how to achieve that level. Most importantly, it was different. So I was at Johnson & Johnson, and that's a great company. It's a big company. It's very consistent. It's got its structures in place. It's a very well-oiled machine. The polar opposite is a startup company trying to bring orthopedic instruments, implants into Australia and then sell it through a distributor model. So it was different enough for me to get those different experiences. I packed the wife up, I packed up the dog, and we were off to Melbourne. 4 years into that role, I took a bit of a career pulse check. I had managed to grow the dollar value of the company or the division that I was looking after. I had increased a range of my management experiences. So again, I had direct heads, I was working with distributors. We were bringing products into Australia. So I got that marketing aspect of understanding a strategy, business planning. I got to forecast what kits I was going to need, what sales I was going to make, and then therefore what stock I needed to hold within the warehouse. A distributor model, we got to talk about landing costs, how much we're going to get them for, what our profit looks like, and that set back the basic profit and loss and margins. So for those of you that don't have much experience in profit and loss, basically if you can sell it for more than you bought it from, you're making a profit, and that's business. I got to increase my footprint. So although I started in Victoria, I looked at managing Tasmania, then South Australia, New South Wales. So I got to increase my exposure within the country, and my understanding of how the different markets work and how I can influence different points within different markets. Most importantly, over those 4 years, I really worked out what I wasn't going to be taught. In that time, Life Healthcare went from being privately owned to publicly owned, and I didn't really know what an IPO was. I didn't understand the financials. I didn't understand the accounting side of it. So I realized that I could probably fill the majority of those gaps studying an MBA. And at that time, I could use the skills that I was learning within that course to then apply them to the job that I was doing at that time. And the skills that I learned that I couldn't apply, they were just interesting to learn anyway. I put them down towards what my next role might look like. A couple of years into that, one of the gaps that I had was some serious people management. I'd never really looked after a team bigger than 4 or 5 directs and then 4 or 5 distributors. So a role came up at Smith & Nephew where I transitioned into an area sales manager. The team there was, I think, 14 or 15, so I got that management experience. I was also lucky enough to be involved in the integration from them being a distributor in Victoria across into going under the direct umbrella. So if you can imagine, that involved a lot of cultural shifts, a lot of processing shifts, a lot of understanding that the Smith & Nephew umbrella isn't the bad guy. They can actually provide us with a lot more money to do a lot more cool things and make a lot more money as sales reps. What I hadn't anticipated is COVID. So in Victoria, where I'm based, it was pretty relentless what we had to go through. So my high-performing sales staff ended up being virtual sales force, and we spent a lot of time working on skills that were going to be applicable when we go back out in the workforce. But I think the first year was more understanding technology than learning anything about sales. But it was a point in time where we all had to, pivot in what we did and how we learned, but to still stay active and ensure that we were providing outcomes for the company. So in 2022, so the start of this year, I realized that I'd achieved my skills and experience goals. I'd transitioned from sales management into leadership. So I'd managed to take people on the journey with me. It's been said a lot tonight, but influencing without authority. And for me, that means that people want to be on that same bus as you. They want to be doing things with you because they understand what you're doing, why you're doing it, and what you see the outcomes being. And that's, for me, a form of leadership. The successful growth, both in a dollar value and team expansion. I'd increased my business acumen over the past 6 or 7 years to a point where I really understood what was happening from a business point of view. I could introduce a strategy and execute on it. I'd identified my gaps, so as I mentioned before, an initial public offering, finance and accounting, and I managed to fill majority of those through my MBA or external learnings. And that's what brought me to my current role. So some of the challenges or observations that I made in my time, I think there's a big point around tenure. For me, it's really important to be able to speak to your experience versus the time that you've done in a role. I mean, you might do the same thing over a 4-year period and that could be seen as tenure. For me, it's being able to do things in that period that really show that you're progressing as a person and that you're progressing as a professional. 4 years doing the same thing but achieving 10% more each year means you're really good at achieving 10% each year. It doesn't mean that you're necessarily going to be growing as that person or professional that's going to make you available for the next role. Having said that, if you're only in a role for a short time, 1 or 2 years, and there's this misconception that can be seen as negative, it's really not. If you can talk to the experience that you've done in those 2 years, why you've done it, where you've gone, and how you've grown from those experiences, then it's just as valuable as a longer tenure. I think identifying opportunity is a challenge. I almost encourage you to reverse engineer your thought process and have a look at the skill sets that you currently have and what role suits your skill sets, as opposed to looking at what your next defined career progression is and how do you achieve those skill sets. So really broaden your mindset. It's okay to go and do something different. You don't have to sell orthopedics through your entire career. The longer you're in your role and the more skills you develop, those skills are then transferable into other companies. I was lucky to be able to move interstate. It was at that point in time in my life where that was okay. And I understand that for a lot of people, getting that market understanding of different states is harder. But I think what COVID's taught us is that you can work remotely from different states, a lot of virtual learning, and you don't actually have to be in that market to have any control over that market. If you hire well and you have people down there that are skilled to a level where they understand and they're on that journey with you, then it makes it very easy to work in a different state from where you have majority of your business. So this slide deck that I used had a slide for a quote. So I put one in. So this is from me, and it's been touched on tonight already, but every interaction is an interview. You'll never know who your next boss is going to be. It could be the person standing next to you in the theatre. You never know if they're sitting in the tea room watching how you act, and you never know whether your next boss is going to reach out to one of your surgeons to get a reference from them on how you conduct yourself. So my advice would be to always be authentic and always be true to your personal brand. You really want to work on being the best version of yourself within every interaction. The longer you're in this industry, the longer you're in med tech, the smaller it gets. You'll find that no matter where you are in Australia, there's someone in a different state that's either worked with you or knows someone that's worked with you, and it can become quite small. So that would be my quote and my advice. As far as progressing your career, I would advise that you really understand where you want to be and what you want to do to get there and how you achieve what you need to do to get there. So have a goal-focused approach. Understand what the plan is. Make it 5 years, but make it fluid. I need to get this amount of skills. I can get that from this role, and then I can transition. Always look for opportunities. They're not just going to appear because you decide that you want to take a different role on. Always keep your mind open, always look for opportunities, and define your own version of progression. There's this misconceived perception that a career progression in this environment is clinical to sales, sales to senior sales management. It doesn't have to be that way. If there's a set of skills that require a title sideways step, then it's okay to go that way. It's okay to get that set of skills which is going to take you to your next role. It doesn't always have to be seen as a sideways step. And if it's a progression in your skill set, then it is a career progression. Find a mentor. That's also been explained tonight a few times. For me, a mentor isn't someone that you can touch base with every week. It's someone that's already set the path for you. Technology these days, you can jump on LinkedIn and basically see everyone's life and their career. You can follow them, understand where they're going. Like I said before, the CEO of Life Healthcare, he was a CEO at 43, and I thought that was pretty cool. So 6 or 7 years ago, I thought, yep, that's something that is achievable. It might not be attainable, but why not set your standards high? I thought that, yep, what do I need to do to be the CEO at 43? And then worked out my steps that way. I also wasn't afraid to reach out to that person on LinkedIn. It's okay to reach out to people that have done something and that you want to replicate, and just ask them, I saw that you've done this. Do you mind giving me some advice on how you got there? Or what were the biggest steps or the biggest barriers to the steps that you made? You'll find that most people are pretty open to chatting about the things they've done and how they've achieved it. My key is to always develop everything. So continuously learn. Don't become complacent. Ask yourself, and again, it's a common theme tonight, but does your company offer any internal upskilling? Do they offer to pay for any of your external upskilling? Are they investing into you as much as you're investing into them as a company? Are you developing from a professional and a personal point of view? It's okay to really focus on your personal or your professional life, but are you giving back to your personal life as well? For me, work is a balance. It doesn't just have to be all work. It's a balance between making sure you're getting that personal achievement, that personal satisfaction, just as much as you are from your professional satisfaction. So I really encourage you to just maybe take a step back and have a look at what your company offers and whether you've invested into yourself as well in the last couple of years. So from my dodgy model on the left of a pyramid, you get the understanding that the higher up you go within an industry, the less opportunities there are. So they become sparse, they become few and far between. So how are you going to differentiate yourself? How are you going to stand apart from the other people going for those roles? And again, I really encourage you to build out your skill set. So really understand what your current role is and understand what the next role is that you're going to try and do. And if there's a chance that you want to stay within your company, then just be the logical choice for when that role opens up. If you're a territory manager looking to be a regional sales manager, do you have a broad understanding of what the other territories within that region are doing? Do you understand the numbers? Have you asked if you can sit in on a meeting and just get up to speed with what they look like? Have you done all the internal training that you require? Have you got the leadership skills? Have you exhausted everything you possibly could so that when that role becomes available, they say, let's put him or her in the role because that's going to save us a lot more time trying to school someone on how to do that role. You can just step straight in there. And I can assure you it's a lot easier for a manager to hire someone that's going to hit the ground running than think about the time they need to invest to get that person up to speed and then take on the role. So be the logical choice. In the same breath, it's okay to move. It's okay to leave the company. Be ready for that next step. Continue to upskill, continue to want to be that regional sales manager. So when that role does open up at another company, you can apply for it and you can take that next career step. The manager, your manager should be okay with it because they've done their job. They've brought you in, they've built your skill set to a point where you now are better than the role offers and you want to progress, and that's okay. Your manager should be really happy for you. Don't expect the next progression. Don't just expect because you're a sales rep, you're magically going to step into a regional sales manager role. And we all know those gun sales reps who 120% year on year, they are really good at what they do. But a lot of them aren't going to make good sales managers, and a lot of them aren't going to make good marketing managers because they're so focused on making that sale. So if it's what you want to do, if you want to progress, make sure you continue to build out that skill set. Understand the next role you want to go in. Every role is different. Know what they are and how are you going to get them. The key for the next step is your preparation. So what are your motivators? Are you leaving your current role because you don't like it and therefore you're taking anything? Or are you wanting to take the next step? And there is a big difference. I mean, at every point in time, someone gets the shits with what they're doing and they want a new role. But is that really the right motivator? And are you making the right choice for your career? Or are you going to think what it is you want to do and then build out that skill set so when that role does become available, you can then step into it. When you do find the role, really understand the role you're applying for. What type of skill sets are they looking for? Who's the hiring manager? What experience does the hiring manager have? What experience is required for the role? What's the current culture? Are you a culture fit? When you submit your resume, tailor your resume for the role that you want. If you have decided that it's a sales role that you want and you apply for 5 sales roles at 5 different companies, you should be sending 5 separate resumes because your resume should be tailored to that company you're applying for, having understood what their pillars are, what their culture is, what their background is, what their drive is, what their motto is. You want to position your resume to stand out from the rest of them and really understand. You want to be the best candidate for that role. When it comes time to sit down and have that interview, it is impossible to over-prepare. Reach out to your hiring manager and find out from them what the role entails. Make sure that you've had that conversation with them, if possible. It might be HR, but just really understand what the role is. So when you go down and sit down with them, you already know what it is that they're likely going to ask you based on your experience and based on what their lookouts are for you. Understand the company. So again, what are their values? What differentiates the company? Are they a distributor? Are they a direct company? Are they focused on patient-specific outcomes? Are they focused on mass production of hip replacements? What is it about them that gets them going? And understand the direction of the division. Do they want you to come in and get 10% year on year, or do they want you to come in and blow the competition away with new technology that's going to allow them to put a bionic arm in? Put together a plan. It doesn't matter if you're going for the national sales manager role, the director's role, or you're going to try and apply for a clinical role. Always have a plan. You will stand out from 95% of the candidates. Even if it's a 30, 60, 90-day plan, if you're going for a marketing role, put together a go-to strategy plan for an implant that already exists. But just have a plan. I can assure you it'll set you out from the rest. Present well. So speak to your experiences. A hiring manager wants to hear about why you want to be at the company, not how bad your current company is and why you want to leave. So really talk to your experiences, speak to the role you're applying for, tell the hiring manager what it is that you're going to bring and how you're going to get there and how you're going to work together and what the next 12 months looks like. Now, I'll put the last point in green because it is paramount, and show initiative. So what gap did you discover? How did you identify it? And how did you address it? If you're currently working in the logistics chain and you found a way to be more efficient with the processes down there, and then you tried to implement it and you did it this way, even though they didn't want to put it into their current business, this is what your outcomes would have been. That initiative is paramount. And again, you'll find that 95% of the hiring managers are looking for initiative. How can they come in, learn by themselves? How can they get up to speed quickly? And how can they go and do their role without me having to check on them day in, day out? And finally, invest in yourself. There's nothing more important than investing in yourself. Your personal brand is the one thing that you don't need any experience to invest in, and you've got complete control over. So be the best version of yourself, constantly learn, constantly invest in yourself, and don't be afraid to talk to how you've invested into yourself. So finally, I guess how to be hireable, have a plan, truly understand your worth, understand how you can develop personally and professionally, and don't be afraid to talk about that in an interview or to anyone that's a potential hiring manager. Be desirable by differentiating yourself. What is it that you've shown initiative in? How have you created a plan that's going to set you apart from the rest? Prepare really well. And again, I can't overemphasize it, show initiative.